Well, I read some amazing books in 2022, like most of you, and unfortunately, I read some that left me disappointed. So let's talk about those. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Theo. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. As I mentioned, I read some very good books this year, like you guys have. My reading year was actually pretty good, but there were a few books that I was a little bit disappointed with. Now, the typical caveat, this list does not include bad books. They're not objectively or even subjectively bad books. They're just the books that I didn't like as much as I was hoping to, as much as I was thinking I would. They're just the books that left me disappointed. They're not even the ones that I would have necessarily rated the lowest. They're just the ones that left me the most disappointed, the most feeling like, oh man, what a missed opportunity, or it just didn't line up with what I anticipated from recommendations, from what I read, maybe the feeling that I got when I first started the book. Just the top 5 most disappointing books for me. And again, these are my most disappointing books, not necessarily yours. It's nice that we're adults. It's nice that we can have different opinions, right? Right. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into my 5 most disappointing books this year. And you know what? I'm not even going to do them in any particular order. I'm just going to throw 5 at you that I wish I just liked a little bit more. The first one is this book here that I don't even know how to explain. It was adapted into a movie that I thought was actually excellent. I think the adaptation worked very, very well. And it's a rare instance where I liked the movie more. I think the aesthetic lent way better to a movie. And in fact, I think that the book was kind of written like a screenplay. So that kind of makes sense. This one is Fight Club by Chuck Palahniuk. This one was actually gifted to me by a friend of mine I do martial arts with, and it's a thin little book, and he gave it to me as a gift, and he said, look, I was gifted this book. When you read it, just gift it to someone else, because it's a very interesting read, and it can be quite thematic and quite intellectual, actually. So I am going to gift this. I'm not exactly sure when or where, but you know, I thought I would read it, and I read it last year. I read it with a couple friends of mine. We did a kind of a buddy read on this one. It was about 4 of us, and we all kind of thought it was okay. This book is really hard to describe. I'm going to read, a bit of a blurb on what the story, what the movie, what the book are about, because they're basically the same. It's an adaptation 1 for 1. So it's a depressed man suffering from insomnia meets a strange soap salesman and soon finds himself living in his squalid house after his perfect apartment is destroyed. The 2 bored men form an underground club with strict rules and fight other men who are fed up with their mundane lives. Their perfect partnership frays when Marla, a fellow support group crasher, attracts Tyler's attention. So I honestly don't really know how to explain this one. I mean, it's supposed to explore toxic masculinity. It's supposed to explore, identity issues and things like it's a very interesting book, but the way that it was written, it just didn't work for me. It's supposed to be jarring. It's supposed to be written in a way that you're kind of confused, and it's a little bit like all over the place and you have no idea what's going on for most of the story. And that is deliberate. From that aspect, I can appreciate it and I kind of understand. I think I ended up giving this one a 3. Like, I get what it was trying to do, but at no point was I left being like, oh, wow, like what an interesting, dive into X, Y, and Z. And at no point was I ever left feeling like that was an enjoyable read or I had a good time, or I really want to recommend this to someone. I was just left feeling like, okay, cool. Like, I guess that was interesting. Like, I guess I'll think about this for a few days, and then I just don't think about it anymore. I really don't care that I read this one. It was quick. And I think, to be honest, this one would probably benefit from a reread. Now, I'm not saying that other people aren't going to get a lot more value out of this. Other people may consider this like one of the best books of our time. Like, that's totally cool. For me, it left me feeling kind of like, oh man, like I could have read something else. You know what I mean? Like, this left me feeling like I could have spent my time reading something else, something nonfiction, something like a thriller, fantasy. I could have read a comic book. Like, I could have read anything else other than this. And honestly, I probably would have felt like that was a better use of my time. So to start off this list with 5 disappointing books, I really wanted to like this one. Again, I love the movie. It was, it makes sense. And the aesthetic really worked in here compared to the movie. Like, the movie really nails it. And that's seeping through the pages, that weird kind of atmosphere. But beyond that, I didn't really care. So number one on the list is unfortunately Fight Club. The next book is one that a lot of people are going to be really sad to see on this list of disappointing books. This is one that a lot of people consider to be an excellent book. This has made a lot of people's like top books of the year list in years past. It was all around BookTube about a year or two ago. And this one is Susanna Clarke's Piranesi. Now, this one is interesting because this is another situation where I can't really explain it, but the reason why is because it's very easy to spoil. At the heart of this is really like a mystery, and you're trying to figure out like where you are, what's happening. It follows this character Piranesi, and he's in this house, this expansive kind of infinite house with like vestibules and statues everywhere. Think almost kind of like a weird little like palace atrium type of house, and it just goes on forever. And there's all these different rooms, and there's certain areas where there are stairs and it gets like deeper and all that stuff. There's little like weird puddle like oceans and stuff in certain rooms. Anyway, it gets pretty nuts, and you find out very quickly that he's journaling. He's trying to figure out, like, I don't think he really knows where he is either. We sure don't know where he is. And there's only one other person that he interacts with and encounters, and he calls him the other. And the story really is just about him figuring out who he is and like where he is. And at the end, you're left like there is a twist. And at the end, you're kind of like, okay, cool. Like that makes sense. And honestly, I sort of saw that coming about, I would say maybe embarrassingly like 2/3 of the way through, instead of like some other people like halfway through. The character was just a little bit naive and kind of stupid, and he's charming in his own ways, but it's just not a character that I related to or that I cared much about. And honestly, at the end of the day, the story was just a miss for me. It did tie up some loose ends at the end where it was satisfying. And this is a book where I appreciate more what it tried to do versus kind of the delivery and how it made me feel and the experience that I got from it. Like, I respect it. I think this was a difficult book to write. This is written in sort of like dates and like journal entries and stuff. Not all of it, I think, but like most of it, if not all of it, are sort of written that way, where he's dialoguing or like diarizing like what happened and what's going on. So I respect what it tried to do. It couldn't have been an easy book to write, but it just didn't really work for me. And quite honestly, I mean, I can try and pinpoint reasons why. On paper, I think that I was supposed to like this one a lot more. It just, for some reason, I didn't, and I can't exactly identify the one or two things that held it back for me. I think it was just the overall experience. I don't think that I was left feeling the way I was supposed to. So it kind of hurts because a lot of people highly recommended this to me. This was supposed to be one of my best books that I've read this year, but unfortunately, it was just kind of a so-so book. I think I also gave this one a 3-star. And for all you Susanna Clarke fans out there, I apologize, but I will be reading Doctor Strange and Mr. Norrell, or whatever that book is, at some point soon-ish, maybe next year, maybe not, I don't know, but I hear really good things about that one, and I have that one. So, unfortunately, this one didn't land for me. But I would recommend this. There are people that I would recommend this to, people who would, I think, appreciate the narrative structure in this, maybe the character of Piranesi, maybe the twist, and maybe the atmosphere, because really the atmosphere is what kept me reading this book. It was very immersive, very mysterious, very kind of beautiful, and that's what kept me engaged. So honestly, other than that, it didn't really work for me. Sorry, but Piranesi was a disappointment for me in 2022. This one actually breaks my heart because I went out and I bought the entire trilogy. I think the covers are some of the most beautiful covers I've seen on books. And I really wanted to like this one, but I just didn't. And, it's one of those situations where I don't know if I'm going to continue reading the series. I feel like I probably will, but I have no urgency to it. So I really can't commit right now to reading the rest of it. This is, unfortunately, the Daevabad trilogy by S.A. Chakrabarty. This is The City of Brass, and this is the one that I read this year. This one didn't work for a number of reasons. Now, a couple things I did like. I read this during summer, and it takes place in 18th century fantastical kind of Cairo. Part of it takes place in this completely mythical, magical city called Daevabad, but really our story starts following Nari in Cairo, and the atmosphere, the aesthetic, the desert fantasy, summer type vibes worked really well. I read this during summer and it worked. Even the characters, for the most part, I could get on board with. Nari is like a con woman with some special powers. There are jinn It follows a couple different characters. They end up kind of meeting later, as you would expect, but the writing kind of held it back. I mean, the writing was good enough. And I did listen to part of the audiobook, and their narration was actually just fine. But really what held it back was the story and like some of the tropes and stuff that are typically found in YA books that just don't work for me. This one read very much like a YA book. And the reasons why I didn't really like that was because of the tropes, like I said, that are most common. And some characters just, you know, emotion is driving their decisions. And in certain circumstances, you're just like, what are you doing? And why are your priorities over here? Like, what the hell is happening? So the characters were kind of annoying after, you know, a certain amount of time. And really it was just that emotional kind of drive that some of these characters exhibited. And the tropes themselves were enemies to lovers. That happened very quickly. So there's kind of like an insta-love component to it. There's a love triangle, which if it's done well, it's done well. In this case, I'm like, this is, oh my God, it was frustrating. So I ended up giving this one, I think, a 3-star too. There are going to be a lot of people that really vibe with this. There's some really good like family politics. There's really fun magic in this. There's, like I said, the aesthetic, the vibes, everything on paper should have worked for me, but like, it just didn't. And I don't really know why, but I chalked it up to some of the character decisions, some of the emotional, like just the YA emotions kind of running wild in the characters and their priorities and all that kind of stuff. And also those tropes. Those tropes were very much, turns out it was at the forefront of this book. Like every now and then I would get completely immersed back into this story and thinking like, oh yeah, like desert fantasy, magic, djinn, awesome. And then boom, there's like more about this love triangle, or there's more about this relationship. And I'm just like, I just didn't care at the end of the day. And so I desperately wanted to like this one a lot more than I did, but it just didn't land. And I don't know. I like I said, I own the other 2 books. They're absolutely gorgeous. The writing is just fine. She's a talented writer. I think she's, you know, this book is going to be loved by tons of people, and it is. I just feel like the crowd is a little younger, and for someone who I think wanted a little more of the politicking and stuff like that, I think we get more of that in the subsequent books. Unfortunately, I wasn't quite as gripped by this first book as I was hoping to be, to continue and to want to read the next ones faster. Like I think I'll probably read them, but I'm going to put them down for a while and I'll get to them when I get to them. All the covers are incredible. They look beautiful on the shelf. So they're staring me in the face, and eventually I'll read them, but not right now. So for now, for 2022, this was a disappointing read. I just didn't like it as much as I thought I would. Book number 4, again, in no particular order. This one also kind of breaks my heart because it's a sci-fi book. I wanted to read more sci-fi. It's one that I wanted to read for a long time. It's one that I wanted to like. It was recommended to me by quite a few people. People that like sci-fi think that this is a very important sci-fi book, and probably one of the better ones. And to be honest with you, I just ended up not really caring. I kind of saw the twist coming, although it was pretty well done, I have to admit. I kind of saw the twist, and I don't know, it read a little bit young. It was a little bit unbelievable at times. I understood why this is considered a very good like leadership book, you know, like how to lead and train, and you know, it touches on humanity and stuff. This one is Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card, and this one, I'll just read this. It says, the novel tells the story of a young boy, Ender Wiggin, who is sent to a training academy named Battle School, located in orbit above the Earth, built to train people to become soldiers that will one day battle against a vast alien race known as the Buggers. And for the first while, like, I was pretty intrigued. I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty into it. He's going to battle school. He's going to space. It's this kid, you know, he's fighting through, you know, these challenging relationships and trying to get popular, but also advance in the school and train and do all that kind of stuff. And things don't always go right for him. In fact, he encounters challenge after challenge after challenge. And it's kind of it's a cool like underdog story too. And for the most part, I mean, I liked it for a while, and then it just became a little bit dry for me. It became a little bit boring, and I think it took a while to get to where it was going. This is a very short book, and I felt like it could have been even shorter. A lot of people are going to disagree with me on this. A lot of sci-fi aficionados are going to just be yelling at the screen right now, but I just didn't really care much for it. The characters are very, very young, and what they do and what they say just seemed a little bit unbelievable. And I get it. You know, they're supposed to be taking the best of the best, like the smartest kids in the world and the most capable, to go and do this battle training and stuff, and to really be the front facing force of humanity that's going to basically save the world, right? That's what they're trying to accomplish by putting these people together and training them in this battle school. And so I get it. These are like top tier intellectual and, you know, physically capable children. But I don't know. I found myself not really being invested as much as I wanted to. And I finished reading it and I didn't really care to continue. The twist was okay. Like I said, I saw it coming, but it was well done. I thought it was earned, but I should have wanted to continue right that moment. And for some reason, I just didn't. I found the writing to be a little bit dry too. So like, I don't know, there weren't a whole lot of redeeming qualities for me in this book that made me want to continue. I think I gave this one a 3 out of 5. Doesn't really matter what the rating is. I was left not really caring and not really wanting to continue. And for me, that's a sign of a disappointing book. When you really want to like something, when people recommend things to you, you just want to enjoy it. And sometimes you don't. And so that's what happened to me with Ender's Game. The final book on this list is one that I finished reading not that long ago. So it's fresh in my mind and it's part of a trilogy. A lot of people talk about it on BookTube. It was perfect for the winter, for snowy Christmas season. This was The Bear and the Nightingale. This is the first book in the Winter Night trilogy by Catherine Arden. I have the ebook of this. Also, the audiobook is very well done. It was by, I can't remember who narrates it, but it was on Scribd. And so I had those both and I read 50-50 on ebook and audio. And I had an okay time with it. Now, the problem I had with this book is I ended up not really caring. And I think it's the way that the story is told. This is a Russian fairy tale, you know, historical fantasy. It takes place in medieval Russia, incorporates a lot of Russian folklore and stuff like that, and a lot of history and like historical figures, and like it names a lot of places and stuff. And you know, for the most part, it was okay. It's just the way that it's written and the style of writing, it was very fairy tale-y, and it kind of bounces and it has this cadence that I don't quite know how to explain, but it just didn't work for me. For the first, I would say, quarter to third of the book, I was enjoying myself. One thing I will give it credit for is it has incredible atmosphere, incredible ambiance. I've never felt so cold reading a book. I've never wanted to sit by a fire or sleep on an oven like they do in these cottages and stuff as much. And really, the scenery and the atmosphere and all that stuff was quite beautiful, and it was perfect for winter and Christmas and all that stuff. It's just the story and the characters I didn't really care about. Our main character, I like at the end, some things happen to some characters and like you're supposed to want to care, and I just didn't. And I think it's definitely dark. There's some darker components to this book than I thought. There's a section where there are almost like zombies, like there are things that kind of are creatures. They're either back from the dead or they're visions or they're, you know, like I'm not going to spoil it, but there's some dark elements here that, you know, I didn't really expect. I thought it would be kind of more children, like middle grade type of reading, but it really wasn't. It was good for adults. It just reads kind of like a fairy tale with some dark elements. And I guess I just don't really like fairy tales or retellings or, you know, like I thought it would be really cool because of that Russian folklore, that historical medieval you know, component to this whole thing. But like, honestly, at the end of the day, the plot, as mythical and as fairy tale-y as it was, it just didn't keep me as engaged. And I didn't really love the characters. I thought some of them were interchangeable. It basically follows a couple families, one main family. And like, it was all right. It was all right. If you like horses and you like snow and you like fairy tales and you like Russian folklore or the idea of Russian history and stuff, it might work for you. But for me, it didn't. And so that one, unfortunately, very recent read, is on my disappointed list. Again, I want to just reiterate, these are not inherently bad books. You might love them. They might be some of your favorites. And that's why BookTube is incredible. And being an adult with opinions is amazing, because you and I can have these different opinions and everything's fine. And we can talk about them like human beings. So if we all had the same opinion, we all liked the same stuff, we all hated the same stuff, how boring would this corner of the internet be, right? right. So that is it, guys. Those are my 5 disappointing books. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, but I would love to hear your opinions down below. Have you read some of these? Are these disappointments for you? Were they like your best books ever? Favorite books of all time? Let me know in the comments. I hope I didn't hurt any feelings. You are going to see another video from me soon that'll talk about my favorite books of the year, some of the best experiences I had with books this year, 2022. So fear not, you are going to get my list of favorites. Unfortunately, I started with my disappointing ones, but that's okay. Hope you had a good year reading, and I'll catch you guys soon.